This is a really good recipe. You're gonna like it. So how did you like that? Grinding the meat? Oh yeah, when I do a recipe like this, I go all out. This is my spaghetti recipe. All right, so this is how I was taught when I was a boy how to make spaghetti. The guy that taught me, he married a cousin of mine. And his family, they owned a chain of restaurants in New England. And well, as it turns out, I learned the right way to do marinara. I learned what's done and what isn't done, and how it's done and why it's done. And today I'm going to show you the ins and outs of making the best tasting marinara sauce you're ever going to eat. Folks, this is a good one. It's a really good recipe. We've already ground the meat fresh. I've got fresh herbs out here. I've got some fresh garlic. The only thing I'm having to use out of a jar was a little bit of basil. And I'm going to give you the recipe for this that'll work with dried ingredients or fresh. This is a good way to make a marinara. I'm going to show you meatballs. We're going to get this Italian sausage all prepped up. We're going to cook it all together in one pot. And folks, this, you're in for a treat. This is a fantastic recipe, and I'm happy to share it with you. This is my spaghetti recipe. Come on. The ingredients that we're using today, fantastic stuff. Back here it starts with that sausage. I've got some Italian sausage there, 1 pound. And we have just a little bit over a pound of ground sirloin. Nice and lean, it's perfect for this. Also, you're going to need some wine. I recommend something light and fruity. A rosé works good for this. Blush wines work good for this. I'm going to use my favorite table wine, which is white Zinfandel. It makes a wonderful, fruity, light marinara, and it's perfect. I will caution against heavy reds like a Cabernet Sauvignon or maybe a Merlot. While they can be used, it turns this marinara very heavy and dark, and it's not quite the light and enjoyable thing that it is otherwise. So keep it on the light side on the wine. A rosé is about as dark as you should go. Tomato paste, garlic, basil, salt, oregano, rosemary, and thyme, and that makes fantastic flavor right there. Most of this is done in one pot. We're going to do a little oil separate with some garlic and I'll show you why we do that. And then we're going to get on with making these fantastic tasting meatballs and a marinara that's going to just blow you away. This is worth your time. Let's go at it. When I'm cooking marinara, I usually do a couple of different processes. One of them is what you're seeing here. I get all of my herbs together and get everything ready so that when I'm making this, it's all ready to go in the pot all at once. I don't get one thing started and I'm busy on another, all right? So, do this. This is what the French used to call two things. They had two different terms for it. They used to call this garde-manger work, which is your prep work, your cold prep. That's your garde-manger. And then what we end up with after the garde-manger work is the mise en place. And mise en place would be everything in its place, of course, and that would be basically everything chopped and cut and tied like I'm doing here, and basically ready to go, ready to cook. So that way there's no prep work once the cooking action begins. And the whole idea there is you don't want to be distracted doing one thing like this while maybe your meat is burning over on the side. Don't ever let that happen to you. The basil, I went ahead and pre-measured and just put it into this. And when you're doing with dry, you can just do that. You just pre-measure them out. The garlic. The way I like to remove this paper from garlic, simple enough. I pinch it between my thumb and forefinger in both hands. Give it a gentle twist. When you hear that crackling noise, that paper is breaking loose, all right? That's all there is to it. You have a whole clove. There's no garlic on your hands, you know. It's really a cool way of doing it, okay? So give this a try. Sometimes, if the garlic is super fresh, this may be a little more difficult. Not a whole lot. You just give it an extra twist and that paper will come right off, okay? Let me show you a little trick I like to do with garlic. What I'll do is sometimes I want to make a clean sauce. In other words, a sauce that doesn't have too many specks and stuff like that in it. It's going to have a little bit, but I want to minimize that. So what I want to do is I want to take my garlic and I want to move the oil that's in this garlic to another place. I'm going to move it to this oil, my olive oil. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the garlic, taking the flavors and the oil from it, infusing it to my olive oil with a little bit of heat, and then I put that olive oil down in my sauce and I get that garlicky flavor without the little bitty specks. That's all there is to it. Crush. All right, and if you're doing this and you're new to it, well, watch out for the edge, okay? Keep it pointed down and keep your hand up here, all right, where it's a little safer. Or do this with something else. You can just press flat with your hand. You need to know you're going to get garlic juice on your hand when you do that. All right, now there we have it. That garlic is ready to be turned into delicious right there. The cooking on the garlic also, when you're doing this, that gentle toast that it gets really gives it this fantastic flavor, and it's something I absolutely love. About a quarter of a cup of olive oil at the most. That's all you'll need, and that will easily mix into the sauce that you're going to make. Don't worry, there's going to be some oil that'll surface on that sauce later on, and that's mostly going to be the meat. This particular oil combines well with the tomato paste. It just takes it right in. Getting my herbs prepped for the meatballs. Now, folks, thyme, it's really simple. Just pull those little thyme leaves off. Sometimes you'll get a little cluster like this. Don't let that bother you. Now, you can also strip these things backward. Really works nicely, okay? And I'm trying to, again, be gentle because I don't want any clusters of herbs in any of my meat. I want those herbs spread out, which means you don't want little twigs like that, okay? So pull that out. Okay, now let me show you just a little easier way of doing this. So what we do is we take these real fine ones, just the stalks, and stack them all together, just like this. And the stalk on this isn't so bad when it comes to the finer part of it, just like that, okay? So don't worry about that. There we go. Beautiful. I'm looking for about that much right there, about a teaspoon for my meatballs. Now, I don't want to have a whole lot in there. It needs to be kind of gentle and mild. Again, here, we're going to gently pluck leaves. All right, and the whole idea here is I want to get these leaves together, and we're going to just chop them up, okay? Almost. Now, I've just done this so long that I can eyeball this really well. In time, with a little practice, you get better at it, okay? And I just mashed those together. That's all I did. There we have it. So, about a teaspoon each of the oregano and our fresh thyme. Now, with that basil being more concentrated, using a teaspoon of it is sort of like 2 teaspoons of these, all right? If you're using fresh basil, go 2 teaspoons. The garlic, oh, this is fun. Now, since all of this hits the same place, guess what? This, we first remove that callus, okay? I just don't need it in my food. I'm going to crush the garlic. Now what this does is it just keeps it under control, keeps it from flying around on you when you're trying to first mince it, Okay? Now, notice that technique. Keep the thumb under if you do this, always. Otherwise, you can cut it real easily, all right? So what I'm doing is just trying to chop the big pieces down small enough to get them minced well. To get this minced, there's two ways. The way that's taught to chefs, which is choke up on that handle, pinch the blade. You can just rock it back and forth. In time, you get pretty quick at this. Okay, that's a good way of doing it. You can just do a direct on chop if you want to, or there is a rocking chop, and that's what I want to show you right here and now. This is something I learned from another chef some years back. All right, now keep the thumb under at all times. Fingers on the back of the knife, bullnose back like this is really nice to work with. About no more than 8 inches of blade, fairly straight, slight curve. And then pull your hand back a little bit. On top. Now here's a tip that will help you. When doing this, if you will take that blade, instead of keeping it straight up and down, if you'll simply angle it a little bit, not as much as I've done here, just a little bit like so, and then you're gonna get a better cut. Don't ask me why. It just seems to work out that way. And that was decades of experience that taught me that little goodie. All right, so take it and use it and enjoy it because it's worth having. All right, here we go once more. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you have your own meat grinder, then you should do this, okay? So if you've got a meat grinder, definitely take the time to make your own ground beef. It only makes sense, and folks, you might want to consider one because there's no way you can get the quality of ground beef that you get unless you grind your own. And once you start doing it, you'll see what I'm talking about. So anyway, I have this lovely, still semi-frozen piece of sirloin right here. I like to do meatballs with sirloin because it is a fairly lean meat. And for meatballs like this, you don't need a really fatty meat. Now let's get a bowl, put it up under our grinder. There's a lot of different kinds of grinders. Mine's an attachment for my mixer. There's the countertop grinders. These are the kind of grinders that you use that are, you know, the ones that you mount on the side. They all work fine, folks. Do yourself a favor, get a grinder, okay? There we go. There we go, beautiful ground beef. Have our meat ground up. About a half a teaspoon of salt. That's all it's going to take there. Remember this, what we just made? That's right, put it right down in here. It's as simple as that. From here, you want to get it all mixed together. So just kind of get it stirred around while it's still loose. You don't have to mash it or anything else. Look at that. Isn't that easy? Super easy. Oh, let me tell you, when it comes to good meatballs, this is great. Now, if you folks will notice, this stuff's already starting to stick together. If you'll notice, I've also not used any egg in this. There's no breadcrumbs. There's no fillers. There's no binders. Let me explain something. You don't need a binder to get meat to stick to itself, okay? Proteins are naturally sticky. And what is this? It's a big ball of protein right there. Okay, so don't worry about all that other stuff that people are going to tell you you need. You don't need it. You just need to get it pressed into shape so you can cook the thing, all right? That's all you have to do. Combine your spices, get it turned into meatballs. Now, a little bit of squeezing is what I'm going to do here just to finish the combining. Get it all mixed down in there. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Yeah. Small amount. Right there. We're not doing huge meatballs, okay? I don't want gigantic ones, but you know those little itty bitty ones that you've seen in the freezer section? You know what I'm talking about, okay? You don't want them that little either. Okay, just kind of work it a little bit. And if you want something that's similar to not having to use fillers, think about this. When was the last time you put a filler in your hamburger patty? Folks, it wasn't necessary in your hamburger patty for the same reason it isn't necessary here, okay? There's a meatball right there. The KISS method works well on this. If you wish to combine meats, does really well, combine pork and beef, or you can use venison in this, all right, or veal. Take your pick. There's a lot of choices here, and it makes for very, very, very good meatballs, okay? So you enjoy the meatballs your way. Keep them reasonable in size so they're easy to eat. You want each one to be easily 4 bites, but you don't want it to turn into a project to cut through the thing and to enjoy it on the plate, okay? It's time to get this up and running. I'm going to start by getting some searing on my meat. Now this has to be done the right way. You can't put the meat in the pan and heat it up. It doesn't work that way, folks. Searing requires a good hot pan, all right? So we heat our pan first. That's what I'm doing now. I'm going to make sure I've got a good flame centered right up where I need it. If you heat that pan first, get it good and hot, then put the oil in it, then put your meat in it, then you get good searing action, and that's what you need here. We're getting brown on the meat, brown in the bottom of the pan, and what that does is it gives us flavor. We don't need to cook the meat because the meat's going to be in the sauce for a good number of hours, okay? It is not going to have a problem cooking. We cook the meat in advance, brown it in advance to get those deep flavors, those rich, complex tones that you can only get through this kind of process. On my back burner, I'm going to turn this on in just a little bit, and we'll get that garlic processed also. Now, how do you know if your pan is hot enough to sear? It's simple enough. You put some water in the bottom of that pan. If the water sizzles off quickly or slowly, either way, it's way not hot enough. If you put water in there and it does not sizzle off, but it just kind of balls up into a single bead and skates around in there, bouncing all over, yeah, that's when it's hot enough. That's when you have good searing temperature. By the way, what causes that is the Leidenfrost effect. We'll see it in a moment. That's what I mean by if it sears off or sizzles off, it's just not hot enough. We need more heat. Ladies and gentlemen, look at that action. Do you see what's going on here? See how that water's just skating around in there? That's what we're talking about. There's our Leidenfrost thing, okay? That's what we're looking for when we need a pot or a pan hot enough to sear. Now, easy enough. We need a little oil. Always like to get up on the side of it there a little. I'm going to start this one with my sausages this time. Doesn't matter which way you do it. It's important not to crowd your pan. Don't get too much cooking at once. So if you notice, I'm not trying to cook them all the way through. That's not what happened there. That's not what we're doing. Looky here. We're getting these pulled out. Look at that. We got all that browning on those meatballs and on the sausage. And right down in the bottom of the pot. Oh, yeah. That's looking really good right there. That's what I was wanting. Now comes the action. If you'll notice back here, we have that garlic just cooking beautifully. I want to keep it cooking for just a moment more while I do this part right here. You're going to need a whisk for this. Stand back a little. And the whole idea here is to break loose what we just built up on the bottom of that pot. That's going to help to start dissolving that and breaking it down. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how we develop flavor and character. Now you're going to see some little flakes and chunks and bits come loose from the bottom of the pan when you do this. Don't let that cause you to hesitate. It didn't ruin anything, and those specks and flakes will not be in the finished product. They're going to dissolve out. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take that garlic that I've had cooking up. I'm just going to pull the garlic itself right out of here. I'm going to use the oil. A little messy at first. Don't let that cause you to hesitate. That paste is going to take that wine right in, and this is going to turn into a nice, smooth, thick tomato paste. Here we go. It's still a paste. It's getting more saucy. Now, time to get that oil in here. There's our garlic. Now here's the thing. We got to get this thinned down to where we need it. And that's going to be a matter of getting enough water in here. And I still have this with my flame on. I just turned it up to high. Now I want this to be a little thinner than I would normally want it on my spaghetti. And here's why. This sucker's going to be cooking for hours. I'm looking at 3 to 4 hour simmer time on this, giving it a lot of time to slowly cook and develop flavor. Once this comes to a simmer, it's going to be set to a low temperature, and it's going to set that way for a very long period of time. In cooking this, you also need to be very gentle when you stir it, because you don't want to break your meatballs and your sausage, okay? That's all there is to that. It's very simple. So far I have put 2 cups of wine in this. This is a little over 2 cups of water right there, just about 2 cups or just slightly more. And I have more water to put in through the simmering time. Isn't that nice? My basil, all of it, right now. And if you're using any dry herbs, right now is when they go in. A little bit of salt. I want about a half of a teaspoon or slightly more. Our herbs, folks, look at here. Just drop them right down in here. Get them down in it. They're going to be fine. Now, if you want to worry about that falling in there, go ahead, or just tie it off to the handle. Isn't that simple enough? And whenever you're ready to remove any of these, they're easy to pull out because you didn't make it too hard. See that? Now, while that's coming up in temperature, I'm putting my sausage and my meatballs right back down in here. So for handling this sauce and gently stirring it throughout its cooking cycle, you're just going to want to use a regular spoon. All right, after this comes to a simmer, I'll put a lid on it, and I'm going to cover it, and we're going to let it slowly cook. And like I said, it's a gentle process. It takes a lot of time. Now you see we're already getting a little bubbling action. I'm going to pull that flame down just a little bit. Time, folks, just some time. All right, this has been simmering for about an hour. I'm going to pull out my herbs right now. This, if you've lost a few leaves, it doesn't matter. Most of what we had in there is right here. It gives us a much cleaner looking sauce without all the extra material in here. All of the flavor from my herbs is right down in here now. So the same way we did with the garlic, we infused that garlic flavor. We've now given it the flavor of the oregano, rosemary, and thyme. The basil's all in there, and we have a very smooth sauce. So there's a few leaves of rosemary and things like that here and there. That's not going to matter. It is still a beautiful sauce. That's what matters. Now, here's the thing. The slow simmer. This is where it turns into patience time, okay? You just got to let this keep cooking. We're going to let it cook on low heat, and it will turn into this beautiful sauce. As it gets thick from time to time, you can either add water, or if you wish to add a little more of that wine and make it a more full-bodied experience, go right ahead. So you have your choice either way. My water is heating over here for the spaghetti. My sauce has been simmering now for about 4 hours. In fact, closer to 4.5. That sauce is absolutely beautiful looking. Halfway through the simmering, I added another cup of wine, and so it's just fantastic looking. The meatballs are intact and looking beautiful. The sauce is smooth, and it is absolutely what I was hoping for. So this is great. What I need to do is get the pasta boiled. We're going for al dente. Couple of tips here. Number one, as you're getting ready to put your pasta in your water, salt the water first, and it takes a couple of teaspoons, all right? After that, put the pasta in there, and once the pasta gets kind of to where it'll bend and fit down into the pot, work it with a fork, keep it from touching, okay? Because if the pasta sticks to the pieces next to it, then it stays stuck, okay? So kind of move it around as it's first getting wet, and then once it's cooked, pour off the water, you know, just run it through a colander and dash it with a little olive oil afterwards. Don't put oil in the cooking water. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't help anything. The pasta's under the water cooking, the oil floats on top of the water, and you just wasted your oil. Put the oil on the pasta after it's cooked. The quantity of everything that I've used today for this sauce starts right here. Let's begin with our meat. I began with 1 pound of Italian sausage. To that, I used also for my meatballs 1 pound of ground sirloin. Now I had a little more here, but you know, roughly that. On the wine, 2 cups of wine is going to get you there, and I recommend a nice white Zinfandel for this, light and fruity. 18 ounces of tomato paste right there. We've got some garlic. You're going to use 4 to 6 cloves of garlic on average. And then for this, you're going to be using 2 to 3 tablespoons of basil if it is dried, and if it's fresh, you're going to want 1/4 of a cup to 1/3 of a cup. Salt, a couple of teaspoons of salt is what it's going to take. Now when it comes to your thyme, your rosemary, and the oregano, those 3, if you're looking fresh, you can use about 1 tablespoon of each. 3 teaspoons is going to be really nice on those. If you're using them like I'm doing it here where I tie it, then go ahead and use the equivalent that would give you that. If you're using dried herbs, on all 3 of these, it's about 2 teaspoons, all right? And on the rosemary, if you're using dried herbs there, take those 2 teaspoons of leaves and rub them down in a mortar and pestle so that they won't be hard and woody. Okay, there you have it. That's your recipe. Let's take a look at what this looks like when it's all finished up. So we're starting to break a boil here. The salt, right down in there. You're going to get a little reaction sometimes if it's boiling enough. Okay, so I fan that out. And when I do that, I like to just pull on it a little. Break it from sticking, okay? To make sure all of those pieces of spaghetti are well surrounded by the water. There we go. See how it's starting to bend and work its way in there? Doesn't take it long. And no, you don't have to break your spaghetti in half. It just makes it harder to eat later because you can't get it rolled up on the fork the right way. Leave it nice and long, okay? Looky there. So I'm just gently pulling it apart. Again, this just keeps it from sticking together. And you want to do that a couple of times as it's cooking. The pasta is cooked. I don't want it sticking to itself. This is when we use the oil, okay? A little bit of olive oil. And don't worry, it doesn't prevent that sauce from sticking. Not at all. Just make sure that you get it all tossed in, okay? All right, now the pasta's been cooked up, and something I want to mention, I put a little oil on there to keep it from sticking. If it does, put your tongs right down in it and just shake it a little bit, just like that, and it will break all of that right loose, okay? So you don't have to worry about any sticking after the oil hits it. It might a little bit, but that's how you fix it. Okay, let's just grab a little spaghetti here. We don't have to go crazy with it. Get it down on our plate. Make a nice little arrangement with it. There we go. Oh yes. That is some good looking stuff right there. Oh yeah. So first thing I want to do, get a little of that sauce right up on that pasta, just to start with. Oh yeah, look at that. And the thing of it is a sauce like this, you can easily use too much. Don't overdo it. Just enough to give a light coating in the very center, and that's it. Now we need a couple of meatballs on that plate, don't we? Oh yeah. Thing of it is any dish that you're going to serve should have a really pleasant look to it. So once it's on the plate, go ahead and clean up that plating a little bit so it is all that. There you go. Look at this. That's what it's supposed to look like. Now I get to sit and enjoy this delicious spaghetti dish. This is something I just love so much. These meatballs. Oh. They're so delicate, tender, soft. Just the flavor of those herbs and the garlic and the meat. Wonderful tasting. This marinara, it's incredible. It's really kicking. And once you've tried it, you're going to see what I mean. You're going to love this recipe once you've had it, and I guarantee you it's going to be so good you're going to want it for your permanent recipe file. Thank you. Thank you very much for watching this one. Take a look right underneath this in the description box. You're going to see recipe links. There's going to be a link for the recipe for this, a link for my website where I sell my recipes, a link for Texas Cooking Today, which is right here on YouTube. And folks, without you, it wouldn't happen. So please subscribe, click the bell button so you get notified. And also, if you would, have a good day and enjoy that spaghetti. Bye-bye. Oh, yeah. I wanted to speak to you for just a moment about my recipes. Now, I put out my recipes, okay? They're on my website. Now, I don't put out your average everyday recipe. You know, I had somebody comment to me recently. He said, why would I do that when they're available everywhere for free? There's a little difference. Those that are for free, and I've printed them out, you have too, little tiny thing in the corner of the piece of paper that's covered with ads most of the time, and then it's not very descriptive. Not mine. Mine are worth having. Okay, so when you get one of mine, it's designed to be printed in such a way that it can be put into like a 3-ring binder. Look at this. Look at the quality on it. Look at how clear this is. The imagery is beautiful. So they can be printed, and this is the way I've designed mine, is so that it can be printed back to back. And then you end up with, you know, a complete recipe that works in a book. And it comes out absolutely beautiful. Pictures that depict everything that you need to do in the recipe. Now, not all of them are exactly that way, but a lot of them are, and I'm getting more and more done this way. And I'm putting a hard push towards good quality recipes that give better instructions than everybody else's. And that's the reason I do them this way. These are designed to have holes punched in them. Let me pull this up and do this with it. Look, 3-ring binder, boom, punch holes in it, you have it right there. Everything's all available for you, okay? So, pardon me, I didn't mean to hit the mic. Anyway, really cool idea, a great way to do your recipes. Instead of having to buy a book of 50 recipes to get 10, you just pay for the 10 recipes, save a whole lot of money, and you got a better idea for how to keep your recipes. Thanks for watching. Please enjoy what I provide. Check out Texas Cooking Today. There's a lot, I mean a lot of recipes there. And if you would, take a look in the description box down underneath me here, and you'll find the links to my website, to Texas Cooking Today, to the stuff that I do, and how to keep up with me and to find out a little bit more. Thank you very much. You have a good day.